Martin.
Good evening. Sorry for not joining in person.
No, it's okay. I was working out how I can return your drill remotely as well.
With pleasure.
Shall I leave it here or bring it to your house?
You could do the
Better to bring it home. It's silly. I'll drop it in on the way back.
Yeah, I might not be here, but yes, okay. Yeah,
Thank you. All right. Pleasure. Thank you. Okay, so we are up to yeah, we just finished this Gemora. We'll get to the next one. 1 second. Yeah, Mem Zayin Amud Aleph. Mem Zayin Amud Aleph. We're talking about the different categories of people who can or cannot form a chazaka because they are inherently in a position that compromises their ability to claim ownership, like someone who is a tailor, a craftsman, for example, that type of thing, a sharecropper, etc., etc. And the question now the Gemara addresses through this brisa is: can there be a situation or scenario when those people can leave that state, even though they started off, the relationship began in that way, but it can change. Things can change. The dynamic can change. The dynamic can change, right? The relationship can change. Toner Rabban on the brisa says, you see this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lines up from the bottom of Mem Zayin Amud Aleph. Uman ein lo chazaka. A craftsman doesn't have chazaka. Yorad me'umnuso yesh lo chazaka. But if he actually leaves his craftsmanship, okay, then he can form a chazaka. The question is, what does that mean? Rashbam says, Yorad me'umnuso is right at the bottom. Yeah, v'shuv machzik bo yesh lo chazaka. And then after that, he forms a chazaka. Then he can have a chazaka. That means to say, he was an uman, and now he stopped being an uman, craftsman, and now he forms a chazaka. Then he has a chazaka. What does that mean? What does that mean? So Tosfos deals with this and says, look at the last Tosfos on the page, on the Amud. So we could explain this. Though from those kalim that he gave him, right? Those items or garments that he was given to fix. Okay? After he stopped being a craftsman on those garments. So he stopped fixing them, he stopped repairing them. Then those garments he can now form a chazaka. Like an oris, a sharecropper, who's we're going to see their next case. He's no longer a sharecropper. He stopped being a sharecropper. The relationship has ended. Okay? And then he says, alternatively, even those items that were given to him at the time when he was still a craftsman. Okay? So in other words, the first approach is that he received them after he stopped being a tailor. He's no longer a tailor. He's retired, or he doesn't fix garments anymore. He's moved on to a different job. Yeah. I mean, maybe it could be a temporary pause as well. I don't know. I mean, you could say maybe he goes home at night. He's off sick. Yeah, he's off sick. It could be the relationship as such that. Yeah. So it's a bit, okay. All right, similar explanation is he stopped being a craftsman. That's Tosfos' first approach, right? And he receives the items. That's a much more straightforward way of understanding the Gemora. He only received the items after he stopped being a tailor. So now, of course, I'm like a regular bloke. So of course I can form a chazaka. Why not? I can claim ownership, etc. Yeah, you go back to the regular dinner. Somebody else, you sold it to me. Prove you didn't sell it to me. What's it doing in my house, right? Alternatively, Tosfos says, could even be that the same items that were given to him when he was a tailor, he can now form a chazaka. And the case is that he delays after his craftsmanship the length of time, right, that it's normal to return them to the owner.
He's repaired. Yeah, he's saying they were given to him as a sale.
He's given them to he received them. He received them as a tailor, right? But he has waited a length of time within which it's the norm to give them back, and he didn't. And now he's claiming ownership. So now you could say that's called Yorad Me'umnuso. So he's no longer a craftsman, no longer that relationship anymore. In other words, he can turn around to the person who's saying, I get, what do you mean? Well, how can you claim ownership? The guy says, I gave them to you to fix. And he said, what do you mean? Had they been fixing them, I would have given them back to you a long time ago. Or you would have claimed them maybe a long time ago. And you didn't. You know, he's held on to them a lot longer.
He's wearing. It's a door.
He's wearing them. He's wearing them. Well, he's using them. Yeah. What? Yeah. He's claiming ownership. Yeah. He says, Venire would seem to Ben Uman Nami Domal El. The case of the Ben Uman, we said the son of the craftsman can form a chazaka. He says the Yeshlo chazaka. Where we said he can form a chazaka. Where we said the son of the tailor can form chazaka because he's an independent person. Yeah. He Omar, when he says, B'fonai hoida, he admitted in front of me, Hainu acha sheshoa acha mers oviv. It means after he delayed, after his father died. Because if not, ein nirashe neman. It doesn't seem that he would be believed since the boy since he could have said, I bought it. Because even if he claimed, I bought it from you, he wouldn't be believed. If he would claim straight off, I bought it from you, he wouldn't be believed. And therefore, there is no he is not believed when he says he admitted in front of me. He admitted in front of me that he he admitted in front of me that he bought it from you, that you sold it to him, the father. Okay, I don't know what he's saying. I think he's just trying to bring a support for this idea that there as well we were talking about where it was delayed after the father died. It was delayed a certain length of time afterwards, so that he's out of that bracket of where he would be believed to say it was purchased. It was purchased. In other words, what Tosos is really trying to say is that there are two ways of understanding this Gemara. There's the more straightforward, less revolutionary way, which is that the item was received only after he stopped being a craftsman, or the more revolutionary way of understanding, which is that even if the item is received at a time when you can never form a chazaka, if your circumstances change to the extent you are then able to form a chazaka, so you can now claim ownership, legitimate ownership, right? Okay, let's go back to the Gemara. So that's the first case. The second case in the Gemara is that a sharecropper, we said, can't form a chazaka, but Yorad Me'erisusa yesh chazaka. If he stops being a sharecropper, same thing, he can form a chazaka. Yeah, he descended, he stopped being a sharecropper. Now, again, this was the case that Tosa says is obvious, it would seem, that he obviously is in the field. He was in the field originally as an artist, as a sharecropper. Now, you employ someone as a sharecropper, right? Those who learn Daf Yomi come across this all the time. It comes up again and again and again, yeah? Whole discussion in the Gemara, what the norm is it half, is it third, whatever, different ratio, whatever. An oris is a sharecropper, but basically the deal is, by now, hopefully, by the time you get through Perek HaMakabel, there's about 20 blood or 50 blood of this going between an oris or chachirus, right? There's a choicher and an oris, right? Choicher and an oris. And the difference between them is, an oris is a sharecropper, so basically it means that whatever is produced, you get a certain proportion, right? Whereas a choicher is, you give me 50 quid, I don't care where you get it from. No, I mean that's basically what it is, or 50 bushels of wheat or whatever. Yeah, doesn't make a difference to me. Take this land, yeah, it's a thing. Take this land and just make sure you give me this amount of things. So obviously, the first one is dependent on what happens to the land. They both could go. Your value of your investments could go up or down, right? They both stand to lose or gain because they're going to split whatever the profit is. Yeah. Whereas when it comes to the relationship, which is based on a chachirus relationship, a choich is not like that. It makes no difference to me. I don't care what happens to the land. You have to give me this amount of money.
The definition of when you stop being a sharecropper, for example, by definition, it's a temporary.
It's a temporary arrangement, yeah.
So do you consider yourself a sharecropper between jobs, or are you not a sharecropper and then you come back to being a sharecropper?
No, this is a very simple situation. You employ someone to work your land as a sharecropper, let's say for 10 years. Okay, it's a 10-year arrangement. It's a signed document. Everyone knows that's the story. You're working the land. You get a third. I get 2/3 because I own the land, or whatever the arrangement is going to be. Fine. At the end of 10 years, it's over. Then you stay in the land. You work the land, you farm the land, you pick the grapes, whatever it is. I come after 3 years after that, and I say, excuse me, can I have my land back? And you say, what are you talking about? You sold it to me. You sold it to me. Oh, where's the shtar? I don't have a shtar. It's 3 years. Are you an oris? What do you mean I'm an oris? I'm not an oris. We had a clear agreement that up to the end of year 10, it was a sharecropper arrangement. After that, I'm an ordinary Joe. I don't have any, I don't have any good, I can claim you sold it to me legitimately. And that's what a case of a sharecropper is more straightforward. You understand? Tosis understands that that case is obviously a case where it would seem that well, it's not so clear anyway.
It was obvious.
No, not obvious, not so obvious, but he's forming a chazaka. He's forming a chazaka after he has stopped being an oris. It's true. The truth is interesting. Tosfos seems to take on straightforward that he went into the land afterwards. Interesting. He went into the land. That's why Tosfos compared it to the case of the craftsman who receives the item after he stops being a craftsman. So here as well, it seems to be the sharecropper went into the land after he stopped being a sharecropper. So I wonder if my example was a good one. Maybe not. I gave you an example. He sort of stayed in the land. Maybe that's not such a good example. Yeah, but that's Tosfos seems to take on as a straightforward thing.
It must be that because that's no different to anybody else. In other words, he must have been in that place.
Yeah.
Different contract.
Yeah. But the point is, it could be. But the point is that there was a relationship between me and you as a sharecropping relationship somehow, right? That has ended. Your admi or Rasuso, that has ended, right? Now I can form a chazaka. The implication of Tosfos is that I enter the land now. It's obvious. Why should it's obvious? Why can't I form a chazaka? The answer is because you could say that the owner of the land could legitimately say to the sharecropper, what do you mean? Everyone knows you're a sharecropper. You've worked for me for years as a sharecropper. That's why you can't form a chazaka. I was assuming that was the relationship. What are you talking about? I've stopped being a sharecropper.
I was saying you didn't know that he was.
It doesn't know, but you can see why there would be an element of doubt because of the nature of their pre-existing relationship.
Would it make more sense to talk about his tools, maybe? But he had a tool and check, his very well.
Oh, right. Yeah,
And he kept it afterwards, and then we have it for the sharecropper.
maybe.
So,
That's like a proof that he is a sharecropper. I mean, you're saying that's a proof for the...
for the Hazaka, but actually he was using it as a sharecropper.
And now is...
And
Now,
he's stopping sharecropper, but he still could face the
he's saying you should... Well, he's saying you should have stopped me.
Yeah.
And that is always the claim, really, with Chazaka, you should have stopped me. And the guy says, well, I didn't stop you because you're my sharecropper. He says, I'm not your sharecropper anymore, yeah. Anyway, that's the second case. You're on Ben Shecholak Ve'ishash Niskarsha Rein Kishak Olodom. Very interesting. What happens? We've said that a son is not allowed to form a chazaka in his wife's in his father's property, and a woman is also not allowed to form a chazaka in her husband's property. Why? Similar to the case of the craftsman, because it's assumed that he doesn't mind his son working in the land. He likes his son. He likes his wife. He's happy for his wife to work in the land. So he's not going to expect to object to them working in the land. Therefore, they can't form a chazaka, right? You understand? You can't. Why is it that a woman or when there's a relationship, husband, wife, wife, husband, son, father, father, son, why can you not form a chazaka? No, there's no Yerusha. He's still alive. Father's still alive. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, but even before that, let's say there's no question of Yerusha. There's not, everyone's healthy and well and everything else, right? So why is it that you can't form chazaka? Well, why can there be no chazaka when the relationship is father, son, or husband or wife?
Because there's an intention to do things not for reward, to do the relationship.
No, think of the logic of chazaka. You're not far away, but think of the logic of chazaka. What is chazaka? Yeah, the whole point of chazaka.
You object to your family using the land.
You don't object to your family using the land. So why? Well, if the son turns around after 3 years and says, "Dad, you sold me the land," the father can legitimately say, "What are you talking about? I sold you the land. You're my son, and that's why you're my son. That's why you're living in my property. That's why you're living in my property on the Costa del Sol. Not because I want you to take ownership of it, but because I'm just a nice dad, and I don't mind you hanging out with your mates for months on end."
Therefore, I wouldn't object.
Yeah.
No.
No, seriously, you got a property in Marbella, right? You never said anything for years. They went every year for months on end, yeah? Layabouts, a lot of them. And they go out to Marbella every year. And Nochmer, after the 3 years, they go along and say, hey, Dad, you sold us the property. So you're going to laugh at them and say, well, I didn't sell you the property. I'm just nice, Dad.
The father's not going to object.
What was that?
You've got to object in those 3 years, haven't you?
Yeah, but the father's going to say, I never objected, because what was that? Why would I have thought that you would claim
He
ownership?
could be expected to object.
Exactly. He wouldn't object.
So then it should be.
Right. However, the chiddush here is ben shecholak. What?
Too nice. It's too nice.
It's too nice. Ben shecholak, but ben shecholak. Yeah. Ben shecholak, which means that he is no longer dependent financially on his father, which these days is about the age of 56. He's no longer financially dependent on his father. He's not somech al shulchan. Yeah.
Change the subject here.
I was very careful. I was gonna say 43, and then I thought that's no good. That's no good. Yeah. So basically, at the end of the day, when you ben somech al shulchan, right? When a child is no longer somech al shulchan aviv, he's no longer relying on his father's table, literally. Okay, he doesn't rely on his father financially, or which is the even more straightforward case, a woman who got divorced. So there's no longer that relationship there. Then they're like anyone else, because then they're like the whole point is, why is it that a father doesn't object to the son? Because he supports the son anyway. But in the situation where there is no longer that independent, there is no longer that dependency, and there's more of an independent relationship, he would be expected to make an objection. Now, I know exactly what you're thinking, Paul, and the Gemara's already thought of your question. The Gemara says, Bishlam, I understand, ben shecholak. Yeah, well, no. A son who is no longer dependent on his father, it's strict. That's a chiddush. I might think, what might I think? I might think that avle ben acholi ochil gabe. That father to a son always forgives him. Yes. Even if he's in his mid-20s and he's got his own job, etc., etc., he doesn't object to him using the property because he says he's my kid. And therefore, kamash malon, it's a chiddush. We do the chiddush of the brisa is that what? But we don't say that. And we say once the son is no longer financially dependent on the father is expected to object. Otherwise, the son can claim ownership. Relationships don't always work like that. You know, it doesn't work like that. He hasn't got the same level of dependency. You can't assume, and the father cannot assume that he shouldn't object. You know, he's got to lay down a marker every so often. He's got to send a letter off to Marbella saying, "Son, remember this is mine." I don't know. He's got to do something. He's got to make him a chai. He's got to. It's not a big deal. Once every 3 years, right? He's got to say something. Make sure that you don't take ownership of this. Okay. Commercial on it's not a chiddush. So you don't say that. Ella isha shenisgarsha, but a woman who got divorced, pshita. It's obvious.
There's no relationship.
On the contrary, they hate each other. That's what they got. You know, they got. Oh, not necessarily. Whatever. That's the phrase used. I use that word because that's the phrase used by the Rashbam, which admittedly is extreme, right? Anyway, Martin, remind me to tell you this afterwards. Okay, let's carry on.
Hope
Sorry,
that was a
Martin.
good story.
Sorry, Martin. Remind
No
me.
No problem.
What?
Incentive to be in the room.
It's sensitive. Yeah. Anyway, so the point is, the point is like this. The point is like this. That Isha Niskarsha, Elisha Niskarsha Pshita. It's obvious. A woman who gets divorced, it's obvious, right? That the assumption is that they're separate people. There's often a level, and not always, often a level of animosity there. And as a result, why shouldn't they? Obviously, you should make a machoy, you should make an objection. She's got ksuba. Yeah. They're separate people now. The Gemora says, no, it's necessary. The case is where she is a sofek mugureshes. Now you can have a case where a woman is not vadai divorced. It's a doubtful status. How can you have a case of a woman who's a sofek, whether she's divorced or not? Nowadays, it's very difficult to have a case like that. Very unusual. But no, yeah. And before the Chaim and Rabbi Birnbaum, who about 1,000 years ago instituted that you could not give a get ba'al korcha. You can give a get. Before that, you could get against her will. Before that, you give a get ba'al korcha, which means throw a get into her chotzer, and that's it. Finish. She's divorced. Now, therefore, you can have a case of a sofek. Why? Because you can have a case where there's a sofek korov lo, sofek korov lo. You might remember the Gemara's in Gittin. Throws her a get. Yeah, Parakazorek in a Gittin. And the question is, how far away did it go? Did it go close to him? Close, that rings a bell? Yeah. Is it close to him? I think that's the beautiful thing about the film. You get no, it's all there. It's all there. It just needs to be like press the button. Yes, you press the button and Gittin. Yeah, I remember, right? Throw the get and how close it was, right? Anyway, so that's how it is. So therefore, this is a sofek. And therefore you can have a case where a woman it's a doubt whether she's divorced or not. And the halacha is, according to Rabbi Zera, as Rabbi Zera says to Amar Rabbi Zera, Amar Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Abba, Rabbi Zera says to Rabbi Abba, Amar Shmuel, Name Shmuel, Kol Mokum She'omru Chachamim Megoreshes Ve'eina Megoreshes, any scenario where the Chachamim said that she is divorced and not divorced. What does that mean? We'll see the Rashbam. She's half divorced. She's divorced in some respects and not in other respects, because the doubt whether she actually the get was closer to her or to him, and therefore whether or not she's actually divorced. In such a situation, Bala Chayav b'Mazonos Seha. Her husband is still obligated to support her. Mazonos means he has to feed her, he has to give her, he is responsible for her, for Mazonos, right? And as a result, okay, you might think it's not a chazaka. Why? Because since he's obligated to give her food, because Ba'ala Chayav b'Mazonos Seha, okay, again, the case was, it's a doubt whether she's divorced, okay? The halacha is, in such a situation, he's still obligated to support her. Therefore, you could say that he can legitimately say, I left her this land and she was benefiting from the pineapple tree on this land. Why? Because that's her mazonos. That's her food. So how can she come along and claim ownership? Yeah. And that's why I didn't object. I have a logical, he's got a logical alibi. Yeah, it's an alibi, really, no? Or whatever. Not really alibi as a person, no. No, it's alibis are being somewhere else. Okay, so here's a logical defense, right? It's got a logical defense. You're claiming chazaka ownership. I sold it to you. Why? Because I didn't object. Yeah, I didn't object. Obviously, I didn't object. Why should I object? I have to feed you. I have to support you. There's a nice plot of land where you can grow potatoes, and I'm supporting you. And therefore, the chiddush, we don't say that, Kamash Malon, that is a chazaka, because since he's begun gerushin process, he's begun the divorce proceedings, they're in the process of the divorce, and you understand, right? He hasn't designated any land for her to feed her, okay? Right? In other words, like this, there's a psychology here. A person who has initiated divorce proceedings, generally, the assumption is they will do the absolute minimum to support the other person. Sadly, that's the reality, right? They'll do the absolute minimum. Whatever the court says they have to do, they will do. They won't do any more. Not always. All sorts of other things. Like the normative assumption would be they will do the minimum required of them by law. And they won't go along and let them use a whole field and benefit from the crops of that field. They won't do that. They will measure out, right, I'm legally obligated, basically say I have to give a pint of milk a week, I'm going to give a pint of milk a week to support you. Do you understand what I mean? They're going to do what's required by the letter of the law. And as a result, if she is squatting in this field for 3 years and he doesn't object, we assume that in fact he did sell it to her. Makes sense? Yeah. Well, chazaka is all based on, remember, psychology, right? It's all mind games, my ownership is created by the fact that you didn't object. That's what gives me the ownership, right? And therefore, if there are grounds to say that you should have objected and you didn't, that is a proof that my claim to ownership is true. Obviously, it doesn't come out of thin air. I have to have been there for 3 years, etc., and I have to have a story. I say you sold it to me, etc. But with all that, yeah, that's halacha. Yeah, you got it. Good. Let's see the Rashbam, the bottom of the previous page. Ben Shecholak. It's the last 3 lines up at the bottom, 4 lines up. Sorry. Towards the end of the page, Ben Shechala, Kiflik Mi'ovev, a son who was distant, he separated from his father, and he was no longer dependent on the father's table. He married someone, and he was no longer busy working for the father. You see that? You see how, in time of the Rashbam, for example, that, and then the Gemora, that was the norm, right? You get married. Until you were married, everyone participated in raising income for the household. You know, you did this and you did that, and you did this and you did that, and that's the important thing. So in other words, your father has some property. Until you get married, you're part of the household. You pay your way, you contribute, etc. Once you get married, you form your own household. You're no longer now contributing to the father's household. You're no longer working and supporting the father's property, whatever. In that situation, he's like any other person. Even though the Mishnah says earlier on in Beis Amud Aleph, we said a man cannot form a chazaka in his wife's property and a woman can't form chazaka in her husband's property. Right? Neither the father and the son and the son and the father. These individuals, since they have separated from one another, they no longer have that familial relationship in the same way. The son because he's grown up and the woman because she has got divorced. They can form a chazaka on one another. And the Gemara says, the son understands. I might think the father forgives the son the fruit that he ate in 3 years, and that's why he didn't cause disturbance. He didn't object. It shouldn't be a chazaka. He's not mochel, he doesn't forgive. But the woman who gets divorced, pshita is obvious, right? With the father and son, it makes sense. I might think he's mochel, and that's why he didn't ask any questions. And the chiddush is therefore that no, he doesn't. He's not mochel. But the woman who gets divorced, it's obvious to machzekes b'nichsei baila, last line, that she can form a chazaka in her husband's property. V'chein baila machzek b'nichsei, and her husband similarly can form a chazaka in hers. They don't like one another. They detest one another. And they should have objected. Right? That's the assumption. That's the assumption, right? Top of the next page. The case is where she's divorced and not divorced. For example, he threw her a get, sofek korov lo, sofek korov lo. It's a doubt whether it's near to her or whether it's near to him. The baal her husband is obligated to feed her ad diyav lo get vadai until he gives her a different get. Rabbi Zera, as Rabbi Zera says, right? He has to give her. He's obligated to feed her until he gives her a definite get, as Rabbi Zera in fact says. Okay, ve'ekele and therefore one can say since she is divorced and not divorced. That means there's this doubtful state. Ishtahi, she's his wife, and he's obligated to feed her. And her husband left her this piece of land in her hand, right? That's what you could say, so that she supports herself from its fruit. Therefore, it's not chazaka because he could say, "Hey, my defense is I'm just giving it to you because I want you to eat from the fruit from it." Come to tell us, no, the Havir Chazaka is the Chazaka. The Kim of the Hischel, the Gerushin, since he began the process of Gerushin, he doesn't like her, he's not going to designate land to feed her. Because with difficulty, he'll give her food, but Tzimtzum, the minimal amount, only when Beistin obligates him. You might say it's a bit of a depressing love is one where Rashi Chaim is going to say is obligated to feed her. She's still tied to him. Rashbam is giving us the reason why he's still obligated to feed her, because she's still connected. It's a doubt whether she's divorced, right? So therefore he has to feed her. You might say it's a kind of depressing look at the look at the situation, that we assume that people in this situation will only give.
Realistic.
Yeah, if they're absolutely for their hand is forced by basing to support, but unfortunately it is realistic, and that is sadly often what transpires. Yeah. Yeah, okay. Okay, fine. Right, let's carry on. Omar of Nachman says, Omali Huna. Huna said to me, Kulon Sheviu Raya Rayoson Raya. Any of these individuals who bring a proof that what? They bring a proof, a clear proof, like a document of sale. They have the shtar still, right? Or Adim, that they did buy the land. Anyone who brings a proof, Rayos and Raya, their proof is a proof, Umamidin Sodet Beyodon, and you leave the field in their land, in their hand.
Yeah, that's not the case of Chazaka. Is it?
No. Well, that's the point. It's Ilachara, this is obvious.
There's a Kiddush, we knew that.
There's no Chiddush. As Ram says, there's no Chiddush in this line. And the Chiddush is actually the next bit. In other words, it should be obvious. This is obvious. It is obvious, right? If the craftsman, the tailor, the dry cleaner has a shtar that you sold it to him, right? It's a clear document that of sale. And obviously he owns the suit. Right? There's no question. He doesn't even come on to Chazaka then. Yeah?
Exactly.
Right. However, Gazlan Shev Uriah, a thief who brings a proof, Ein Rayoso Raya, his proof is no proof. The Ein Ma'amidin Sodeh Biyodoi, and you're not allowed to you don't put the field in his hand. Why?
Manufacturing evidence.
How?
Star could have forged the star.
That's a bit okay. So we have ways. Okay, doesn't mean we have ways of telling whether a document's been forged.
Is he
More prosaic, more straightforward, really. Yeah,
We did have that, didn't we?
it's to do with threats. Correct, and that's the same thing. There's the same logic here, right? The reason why the Gazlan, the reason why the Gazlan who brings a proof, his proof is no proof, and we don't give him the field, is because we assume that, and unless the guy had admitted, he would have basically done something nasty to him. He would have attacked him with a cattle prod, for example. You don't remember there was a famous case? I'll tell you why. No. The cattle prod was a famous case in America of a Dayan who tried to used cattle prods to try and extract that. Tried to extract gittin from recalcitrant husbands. I think he went to jail. I think he went to jail. It was illegal. What? No, it wasn't nice. A bit of gentle encouragement to give a get from recalcitrant husbands attacking with a cattle. So no.
That breaks the law in America.
It's against the law to do that. We don't, yeah. It's against them in this country too.
Unless it's a Jew.
Anyway, so that's the point. He's scared what he's going to do to him, and therefore his proof is no proof, yeah? He would have taken him off to the head of the bandits, we said. Mamtile el Chamore. Remember, we take him and his donkey off to the head of the bandits. Remember that? Yeah. Okay. Now, okay, it's a bit of a confusion. The Rashbam here is a little bit confusing because he goes into the whole continuation of the sugya. But let's just do a few more lines and we'll see the Rashbam. Now the Gemara asks a question: My kamash malon, what is the chiddush in this? The chayra, this is obvious. It's obvious that we do not trust a thief when he brings a proof, like he waves a proof, a document of sale. Hey, I know that I'm the biggest bandit. Everyone knows I've got an armory in my cupboard and everything else. But hey, you sold it to me, fair and square. Here's the shtar mechir. Everyone knows we don't believe that because we already learnt in a brisa in Gittin, which says, or Mishnah actually, I think, lokach misikrikoin. If a person buys a field from a sikrikoin, the chozav lokach mibala bias, and then he goes and buys the field again from the original owner that the sikrikoin got it from. We'll come to what that is in a second. Mitchoy botel, the sale is null and void. Now this Gemara about lokach misikrikoin is the introductory Gemara to the very famous Gemara about the Churban.
Yeah.
Right? The Gemara in Gittin has a very famous Gemara about Kamsa and Bar Kamsa and everything else, right? Just before that, how does the Gemara get onto that whole question of Kamsa and Bar Kamsa and the whole story of the Churban, the second Beis Hamikdash? It gets onto it from This mission, this might be a Bryce, I don't know if it's whatever. It's definitely the Sikrikon is mentioned in the
They
mission.
were murderers.
Yeah, exactly. They were the Sikrikon was it's interesting because the Sikrikon is actually mentioned, I think, in Josephus as well. I think they were the Sicaries in English. Yeah. What was that?
The assassins.
Yeah, the assassins. That's right. I think so. They were basically not very nice people. And they were assassins, but not used to. They had their knives and everything else. And they would therefore be able to extortion. They were extortionists. They'd be able to take money and land away from people or whatever, right? But there were different decrees which the Romans decreed at that time. Rashram goes through them about whether or not they had to kill or didn't have to kill or whatever, what would happen if they did kill. And we'll see that in Rashram. But the key principle of this brisa is if a person purchases a piece of land from one of these bandits, okay, lokach misikrakoi, and then he goes back to the original owner that they got it from at gunpoint, that, for example, right, and buys it from that person. Now, that doesn't mean buys it like we see money transfer hands. Doesn't mean you go to the original owner and pay them £100,000 for the field. Doesn't mean that, right? But there is a shtar, for example, right? They extract a document of sale from the original owner, the guy the Sikrikon got it from. You with me?
Yeah.
Halacha is what? Michai botel. The sale is void. Why?
You might think we've been sent by the secret.
Yeah, exactly. He's scared. The guy who the Sikrikon took it from, Mr. Sikrikon, goes along, armed bandit at gunpoint, and takes the field from Reuven down the road, right? Okay? He then sells it to Shimon. Shimon goes to Reuven and says, Reuven, you know that field that you just lost at gunpoint, yeah? Do me a favor. Sign here that you're selling it to me, because I'm worried about the title to the land because I got it from the Sikrikon, yeah?
Oh, he's not buying it. He's not paying for it.
He wants to get a star. So obviously Reuven's going to sign the star because Reuven is lucky to get away with his life. This guy came with knives and daggers and guns. So obviously he's happy to sign a star. He wants to keep his life rather than his field. Make sense?
Some people.
Yeah, most people, yeah.
It's taken the field from Reuven.
Yeah.
Bought the field from the Sikrikon.
Yes.
It doesn't have a
The
title.
Sikrikon now has the money, the worth of the field.
Yeah.
Shimon has paid good money for this field. But the Sikrikon obviously has not given him the star. So he goes back to Reuven and says, can I have this star? Even though I've not bought it from you.
I want you to give it to me as a gift, or I want you to write a star that you're approving of this sale.
Why would he do it? Why would he do it?
That's the whole point. He assumes they're into
Yeah.
It assumes they're into the boots.
Yeah.
if you've come in from having transacted with the secret on there, he's maybe one of them. You know, favorite party.
The point is like this, that this is why the Gemora is saying that Rav Nachman is in the name of Rav Huna is not telling us any chiddush, because from that case in Gittin we learn that even a person, this scenario where you bought it from the Sikrikon and then you go back and buy it from the Balabais, and we say we only did it out of fear, and therefore you don't get ownership, you don't get title to the land. So kal v'chomer, how much more so? Yeah, if you get it direct from the Ganav, we're going to say that he's only that if the Ganav brings a raya, if the Ganav himself brings the shtar mechira, you understand?
Yeah.
Then all the kal v'chomer you've got no proof. For there we see that even a shtar mechira written by someone who's not a Ganav, the original guy who gave it to the Ganav, yeah, the shtar mechira from him is worthless because we say he did it out of fear. So how much more so if the Ganav himself waves a shtar? Hey, what do you mean? What do you mean? I know that I have guns and knives, but I hate them. It's fair and square. The shtar mechira. Obviously, we're going to say your paper's worthless. Okay? The Gemara says, La fuki midurav. No, the reason why Rav Huna and Rav Nachman is a chiddush because he's coming to exclude the case of Rav. The Omar Rav says, Lo shonu, this only applies. That means to say that this din of going back and buying it from the owner and the sale being nullified is only when the Omar Lei, when he said to him, Lech chazek ukni, when the original owner says, go and make a kinyan. Again, there was no money didn't shake hand, there was no money, right? But he says, go make a kinyan on it. Okay? But there was no shtar. He said in front of witnesses, go make a kinyan. Then we say, oh, he's only saying that because he's scared. Aval bishtar kono. But Rav says, if there was a document, you understand, if there was a document, right? That's too far. Once the original owner has written a document, we assume he's been makneh the land. Maybe it's a takana. Otherwise, are you going to question all documents, whatever it is, right? You understand? Yeah? And therefore, Rav Nachman has a chiddush. Because with the Gazlan himself, even the document is not a proof. You understand? Rav says, in that case where you go back to the original owner, okay, it's only not a proof if the guy just said to you, go and make a kinyan. Okay, go on, have it, basically, have it, make a kinyan, yeah? But if he writes a document for you, then you can rely on that piece of paper. He didn't need to do that. We don't go so far as to say he was also doing that because of fear of the Sikra, right? Okay, that's what Rav says. So on that, Rav Nachman has a legitimate chiddush that with the gun of himself, even a piece of paper doesn't work. Even a star is irrelevant. It's a stage up, right? Do you understand? It's a stage up. Basically, the facts are like this. According to Rav, there's the way Rav Nachman makes sense if he's coming to exclude the case of Rav, right? Because Rav qualifies this case of the Sikra coin. Again, the case of the Sikra coin is I buy a piece of land from a robber, a bandit. I then go back to the original owner of the bandit got it from and said, do me a favor, I've got this land, I'm a little bit worried about the title because I know that he happened to steal it from you. So do me a favor, will you just sign off on the thing? So Rav says, we only say that he did it out of fear and because he had no choice if the original owner just makes a statement. He says to him, oh yeah, go on, make a kinyan. Okay, so we say, oh, you only did that because you were scared, didn't you? But if the original owner agrees to write a proper shtar, then we say, no, that's a sign that he really did sell it to him. We don't say he only did that out of fear as well. You ask me why? Maybe because people don't necessarily go so far as to do that. He could have called the police. I don't know whatever it is. He went so far as to write a shtar. So on that, Rav Nachman makes sense because then Rav Nachman is telling us a chiddush. Rav Nachman is saying that in the event that there's no original owner and it's just me and the robber, okay, and the robber has a shtar that I sold it to him, okay, then that document is not valid. Even though it would be a valid document from an original owner, but it's a step up with the bandit himself. The bandit himself, you would even write a shtar mechira to protect your life. You understand? The robber comes in your house one day, he's got a gun to your head, and he says, sign here that I own this land. You're going to sign it. Why are you going to sign it? Most people would sign it. And that's why Rav then's got chiddush. Yeah? You understand?
This means that Gallup can never own land.
Effectively, yeah, potentially. We had a discussion, and maybe it's different because maybe some Ganovim, they're worried about this piece of land. Not everyone's scared of them entirely. If they're a mafia boss, we said last time, then everyone's scared of them entirely. So potentially they can never form chazaka. We had two opinions last time. Now, it comes down to Shmuel, like Shmuel, the Omar who says, Af b'shtar nami lo kona ad sheyichtav achrayas nechosim. The chiddush is not like Rav. The chiddush is like Shmuel, who says, even with a document, you don't acquire it ad sheyichtav achrayas nechosim until he writes a guarantee. Yeah. So, in other words, he's coming like Fuki de Rav. He's coming to exclude the din of Rav, and he's going like Shmuel. In other words, he's not telling us. I think he said it slightly wrongly. In other words, it's not that he's saying I'm going like Rav. It's the opposite. Rav Nachman's chiddush is that if a person gets it from the case of the Ganav is where there was a shtar, and therefore we see from the scenario of Rav Nachman that even if there's a shtar, and also from person number, the original owner as well, it's all irrelevant. It's all irrelevant. We don't give any credence to documentation if they are being done because you're afraid of the situation or the ramifications of not signing on the shtar. Okay? Okay. And unless he writes a guarantee of property. Because you see, even according to Shmuel, if you go so far as to give achrayas nechosim, in the shtar you write that your land is committed to this loan in the event, or to this sale, in the event something goes wrong, my land's committed to you. Well, that's already much further. You've gone so far to show that you want the sale to happen, we definitely say you were serious about the sale. Yeah, that's what it seems to be saying.
What's the guarantee on the land in that case? I understand.
No,
We
if you
said
write,
should, but it's saying-
if let's say, yeah, if you write in the star that my land is committed to this property, that means if you lose the property, you can come back and claim from my land. That's called achrayas. It's a guarantee. I give you a guarantee, basically. If I go so far as to not just write a star, that if I let's say I was the original owner, the case of the Gemora Gittin, I'm the original owner, right? And I go so far as not only to write a document that I'm selling you the land, but I also put in it, and my land is a guarantee to this. If you lose this property, you can go back and claim another field of mine or whatever. That's already, you've gone above and beyond. That's just showing that you really do mean it as a serious sale. Again, the problem Chazal have is with this whole area is it's mind games. Like, how do you know? And then, there has to be rules in place. Yeah, and there has to be rule presumptions and normal, and the normal, what's the normative reasonable man? The reasonable man test. There's a lot of things in law about reasonable man. Clapham omnibus. Oh, the reasonable man on the Clapham omnibus. There's a reasonable man in test. Very difficult. What's a reasonable person? Would a reasonable person consider this to be offensive? Would they not? Whatever, it's very difficult, right? So as a result, you have to have rules in place, and you have to work out what would be normative behavior. So it's normal for a person who is under threat to agree to, debate Rav and Shmuel. Rav says it's normal to say to someone, because you're scared of the other guy and the other implication, okay, go on then, make your kinyan. But you're not going to go and write a whole star as well. And Shmuel says, yes, you would, because you're scared. But if you go so far, says Shmuel, as to even guarantee all your land to the sale, you wouldn't do that. Then it must be a serious sale. Yeah. And the point is Rav Nachman's chiddush in the name of Rav Huna, when he says a gazlan who brings a proof, his proof is no proof, okay? He's telling you that even if there is a shtar, it's coming like Shmuel, right? Even if there's a shtar, the gazlan waves a piece of paper, and the piece of paper says that I sold it, he sold it to me. It's not relevant. His proof is no proof, right? That is the chiddush. Remember we started this, we said, it's obvious. What do you mean? Obviously a gazlan who says that the thing was sold, he's done it out of fear. And the answer is no, because you can have a situation where Rav actually says that that's not enough. That's not a proof. It's not so obvious. Exactly, it's not so obvious. Let's see the Rashbam. We'll try to. The Kulon, it's the third Rashbam on the page, on the Amud. The Kulon, all of them, Uman Va'aris, a sharecropper and a craftsman, all these cases above, the Arman that we said, we said that if they bring a proof, their proof is a proof. Raya, what is a Raya? Proof, Shtam, Achira, a document of sale, or Edim, Achira, witnesses to the sale. Rayosan, Raya, Milslip, Shiti. The Gemara says it's obvious. The first case is obvious, Mishum Sefer, Nokad Law. And because of the first case, the second case, it talks about it. And that's why it says the first line. It's obvious if all the others bring a proof, it's a good proof. The Chiddush is, Gazlan Shevi Raya, a Gazlan, a thief who brings a proof, Edim, Achira, or Edim, Hudah, witnesses to a sale, or witnesses that he admitted that he owned it. Aval Matan Moas Le'ro, but they did not see the transfer of money. Ein Rayoso Raya. His proof is no proof. Rav Kahana says, had he not admitted it to him, or had he not written a document of sale, he would have given him and his donkey to the chief bandit. He's afraid, and that's why he writes it. Now, what about if he gives money? Okay, so what if there are witnesses that the Gazlan paid money? Does that change the dynamic? Until now, we're saying like this. Even if the Gazlan has a piece of paper or Adim that says that he admitted that he owed the money, right? You with me? Yeah. Right? Or a sale. He missed the money, or there's a document of sale, etc., it's irrelevant, because we say that the only reason you did that was because you were afraid, and that's why you did it, right? But what if there are witnesses that you handed over the money, the Gazlan paid for it?
Unless it was market value, then should be.
No, market value. It's all paid for it. The Gazlan paid. The guy is a Gazlan. Everyone knows he's a crook, okay? But he paid for it. And there are witnesses that he paid for it. Is it?
It's market value. What more can you do?
Is it?
Market value.
Is it? Well, but the guy's going to be too scared not to sell it to you. If you've got a gun to his head, yeah. If you got he's a bandit, right? So he's got his gun to his head. He says, I'm going to give you all the money. I'm forcing you to sell it to me.
Well, tough, mate. If you force someone, pressure someone.
Yeah, we
to sell
talked about
something,
that.
is it valid sale?
I think it is. You might be over baltach mode. You transgress.
Same thing with the gun. I don't know. He's betting the market.
Okay, so this is an introduction to the next sugya, which is linked obviously to this sugya, to the very, very interesting question of what is called Tuluhu v'zovin. Is it a sale or not? Tuluhu means he strung him up from a tree, literally hung the guy.
By your land, please.
Yeah. Please, can you sell me your land? And the guy says no. So he hangs him up. He takes the tree in the middle of the land. Yeah, Tuluhu v'zovin. He hangs him from the tree. I mean, not hang him to death, but Tuluhu v'zovin, and then he agrees to sell. Yeah, Tuluhu v'zovin. He's saying he hangs him up and then he sells. Is that a valid sale? Pardon? Yes. Correct. I think the eighth pair. I think probably the eighth pair. What?
Sale, because it's doing against as well.
So you would think. But Rafuna says it is. Tuluhu v'zovin sfini zvini. Rafuna says if you string someone up and you pay for it, the sale is valid. Have you acted appropriately? No. But it doesn't mean that the sale is invalidated. Still a sale. Yeah, correct. Correct. That's halacha. We're going to see this. Well, we'll see what the halacha is, but we'll chance to see the halacha. Anyway, that is how it is. And Gemora is going to explain that as Rafuna, right? So the Gemara Rashbam highlights this now, just to kind of point this out. If the thief gave money in front of witnesses, then his proof is a good proof that he in fact owns it. Because Rafuna, as Rafuna says later on, Domaru says, Tuluhu v'zovin, if he hung him up and he sold, zvine, it's a good sale. Even though Rav Bibi fits in this case later on, even if the Gazlan gives money to the Nigsal, and even so, the Gazlan, the thief, does not acquire. Rav Bibi is a statement of an Amora, but and Ravuna doesn't hold of the statement of this Amora. And we hold like Ravuna later on. So there's kind of a little bit in brackets here. Basically, Rasham is highlighting to us that later on, there's going to be a machlokas between Rav Bibi and effectively a machlokas between Rav Bibi and Rav Huna. Rav Bibi is going to say that even if there's proof that the Gazlan paid money, that means there are witnesses that he paid fair and square market value for this land. Even then, it doesn't help the Gazlan's case, and the Gazlan doesn't acquire it. Why? Because Rav Bibi disputes Rav Huna on this din of Tuluhu v'zovin. Rav Bibi holds that a forced sale is not a valid sale. Rav Huna says a forced sale is a valid sale. Rav Nachman here is quoting who? Rav Huna.
Yeah.
He's quoting Rav Huna. He says Omali Huna, presumably because he was a contemporary. That's why he says Omali Huna rather than Rav Huna, right? Omali Rav Huna said to me that if the Gazlan brings a proof, then it's not a good proof. So Rashbam is highlighting to us that's only because the proof he brought was something like a shtar mechira, a document of sale. But if he, let's say, brought a proof that he actually paid for it, then Rav Huna would say it is valid. Because later on we know that Rav Huna holds if you hang someone up and you pay for it, it's valid. It may not be nice behavior, we may not like you for doing it, you're not going to get the favor, you're not going to get the class gold sticker, but at the end of the day, for fair play, but at the end of the day, the sale is valid. Got to deal with the facts, the law, even if we don't like how people behave. What's the din in English law? Sale under duress, but you pay for it. What's the halacha? It's probably invalid, no?
Extortion.
Extortion. What's the is that? But is extortion? Extortion means what? Extortion means that you. I mean, I know what it means, but you don't. Then you even if you pay for it, it's it's makes sense. The halacha does seem to be like Rav Huna. We have to understand why. At the bottom of the Omer, the Gemara is going to explain what the reason is, right? Yeah. The Gemara, the Rashbam says, just a few more, we won't get through all of them. The din is that Gazlan brings a proof, his proof is no proof, and we don't put the field in his hand, and neither to anyone who comes from him. If you go in Ben Gazlan, the son of a Gazlan, or Lekech me Gazlan, or someone who buys from a Gazlan, they're all irrelevant. Even if he brings a proof, he's got a shtar mechira because it is clearly, we say it's under duress. The gazlan, anyone who comes from him, it's not proof. His proof is not a proof, and he doesn't acquire it. So Nina, we said Maseches Gittin by Nizokim. We've learned this in Be'er Kan Nizokim. We're not going to have time to see this long Rashbam. We're kind of out of time, but this Rashbam basically goes through the case in Gittin, right? What the story of the Sikri coin is, and why it is that case ostensibly is the same as our case. In fact, it's even more than our case, because there we say that people, the original owner, we don't trust his shtar, because we say the original owner only filled in the shtar because he was terrified to death of the bandit. How much more so when it's you and the bandit? Are you going to be terrified of the bandit, right? And you're going to sign the shtar, right? That's what we said. And the answer we gave, as we said, is that Rav Nachman's chiddush in the name of Rav Huna is that you might think that, like Rav says, that this only applies when there's no shtar. When there's a shtar, that's a good proof. And actually, so Rav Nachman comes to tell us, no, Huna is telling us, Rav Huna is telling us, in a case where you fill in a shtar, even if you fill in a shtar, we say the shtar was under duress, right? And therefore the thief won't be believed. Make sense? Okay, very good. There's no share next week because I'm hoping to be away, Mr. Hashem. I apologize for that. We're going away for a few days, so I won't be here next week. Mr. Hashem will carry on the week after. Okay. That's the plan. So, we'll go through this obviously again. It'll be a bit of time. Have a very good evening.